So this is the offensive line and this is the defensive line. So this is our question. You have two teams. One has really good defensive linemen and the other team has really good offensive linemen. And these two teams are going against each other. Who would you bet on winning that matchup? Is it the team with the good O-line or the team with the good D-line going at it? Now that is a very difficult question because it should be a very difficult question. Both of these components of the NFL are very important. Having a good defensive line and having a good offensive line is extremely important to a team's success. So that's why in today's video we're going to take a look at which one of these positions is actually more important. Which side of the field would you rely on the most if you want to win a game, if you have to win a game? So if you're interested in that, bro, consider sticking around for the video and subscribing. That's all I got. Let's get into it. Now, before we get to the answer of this question, let's first get a full understanding of both of these positions. Now, we're going to break these two position groups down into three parts, and we're first going to start with both of their responsibilities. Now, the offensive line goes by the mantra, we are as strong as our weakest link, and this is to the core of the offensive line. These guys are your protectors. These are the guys that every play have to go through. They're protecting the quarterback. They're protecting the running back. They are at the end of the day the people who allowed football to be played. Now, the main responsibilities of the O-lineman is to pass protect, and these are usually given to the tackles. These are your left or your right tackles. These guys are either on the right or the left side of the quarterback, and the left tackle is actually considered more important because they're guarding the blind side of the quarterback. Now, when we take a look at the defensive line, these guys usually go by the mantra, we are as strong as our best player, because the pass rushers and the entire D-line in general have to have a guy there that can be the focus. Look at a guy like Myles Garrett. He is the core of the Cleveland defense. He is the core of their D-line. Their main responsibility is basically the inverse of the O-linemen. They are the disruptors, all right? They're there to usually rush the passer, and I'm not even going to give them the run defense part because that you usually leave up to your linebackers to see spaces in the line and actually go and stop the running back. So I'm not going to give them that credit. And now let's move on to the size difference between these two groups. When we first look at the O-linemen, they're usually around 6'4" to 6'6" tall, which is the rarest position group in terms of height. So that obviously will play a role in recruiting. It's harder to find people who are 6'4" to 6'6" than people who are in the D-line level, which is like 6'2" to 6'4". But the D-line do make up for this for having freak athletes, for being known as the freakiest players on the field. These are the TJ Watts of the world. These are the Aiden Hutchinsons of the world. These are one of ones, and it's hard to find these athletes. And that's why when it comes to rarity and size difference, there isn't really big of a difference between these two groups. Now, when we move on to the more eye-raising part of this entire breakdown, we can see that the salary between the O-lineman and the D-lineman has a huge difference. First of all, D-linemen like your Nick Bosa's of the world usually end up earning more money than your elite O-lineman. Nick Bosa, who's on the same team as Trent Williams, the best O-lineman in the league, Nick Bosa earns about $10 million more than Trent Williams. So that obviously shows the way the league evaluates both of these positions, both of these areas of the field. They obviously rather pay an elite edge rusher a lot more money than an elite pass protector. But if I just give you that stat, I'll obviously be doing you guys a disservice because the O-lineman in general gets paid as a unit. There aren't a lot of gaps in their payment for every O-lineman position. Your center, your guards are usually paid around the same amount compared to the D-line, where usually it's the top edge rusher that's getting all the money, and you usually end up paying the guys in the middle, your D tackles, a lot less money. So all of that is to give you guys a bit of context about these two positions, these two opposite sides of every NFL game. Currently, the overall analysis is that D linemen are more valuable than offensive linemen when it comes to winning, when it comes to improving your team. Teams rather pay those guys a lot more money. And now my question to you is, what did you write down earlier in this video? What was your thought process when you're comparing two teams based on these criteria? Because I'm gonna go ahead and tell you guys right now, I'd rather have the team with the good offensive linemen. I'd rather have the team with the good pass protector, the good run blockers. These guys are the one that actually make football fun to watch. And I'm about to go into detail for exactly why the O-line is a lot more valuable, in my opinion, than the defensive line. Now guys, I personally believe a good O-line can open up an entire offense playbook. It can make the quarterback be actually good. You can have a mediocre, damn near horrible quarterback perform really well with a good offensive line, and the same can't be said about a defensive line. Good defensive linemen, yes, of course, they can help the team a lot. They can get a lot of disruptions, lead to picks, lead to turnovers, lead to switches in possessions. But when it comes to literally changing an entire team's play style, the way a team perform and the way the team is even thought of, you always look to the O-line. And I'm sure most of you guys realize this. People tend to blame the offensive line when things aren't going well for an offense, and this is evident throughout the NFL. If you bring in a rookie quarterback, for example, and this guy doesn't perform, a lot of people tend to blame the O-line for the struggles. The O-line of a team usually is the one that is there in the silence, in the shadows, making things happen. Without a decent O-line, without a good O-line, you can't have anything function within your team. Your offense can't stay on the field if you don't have these guys, if you don't have these guys working as a unit. And there's a huge reason, guys, why I said the O-line go by the mantra, we are as strong as our weakest link, because this position group requires a lot of synergy and teamwork that you really don't see in other position groups. The O-line operates as one, and I think if a team can stamp that down, if a team can prioritize that component to the minute details, they can actually get really far instead of focusing on something like the D-line. Because I honestly think the D-line can be significantly improved by going out there and getting yourself a star, by going out there and signing an elite edge rusher. You don't have to worry about synergy and teamwork and togetherness and experience together as much with the defensive line compared to the offensive line. And that is something a lot of people don't take into account when they're looking at both D-lines. When they're looking at the D-line, they think, oh, these guys are fun to watch, these are the guys that gotta get paid. But then you look at the offensive line and you realize that these guys, they're doing a lot of physical work. They are athletes in their own right. However, they have to do so much on the back end in terms of communication, in terms of teamwork, in terms of being a group, in terms of being one. I think the offensive line embodies everything about football, and the fact that when we look at their salary, which is the highest metrics to look at how these guys are valued right now, to me, it's kind of crazy that an elite O-lineman doesn't get paid as much as an elite edge rusher. With all that being said, I do understand that D linemen have more presence on the field, have more presence on the team in general. People tend to know D linemen more than offensive linemen because of that individual factor. So I get that as a component. But a part about the offensive line that a lot of people don't understand is that no matter what these guys do, they always don't get the recognition that they deserve. Because when things are going well for the team, the offensive lines, they don't get the credit. It's usually the quarterback, the running back, or the wide receiver. But when something is going bad for the team, people are so quick to look at the line. People are so quick to say the O-line, they're line sacks, they're not giving the quarterback time. Part of the reason you hear more about bad offensive lines is that it's much more visible when they screw up. Essentially, a good defensive line is a bonus. A good offensive line is a necessity. So the fact that their mistakes are a lot more visible, or their mistakes are a lot more impactful almost, you can see why I, as a human being, will want to invest in that position, in that aspect of the team, to make it as good as possible before we actually look at the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line. But that's just my opinion. What do you think about this? If you like this video and you want to learn about why it sucks to be a linebacker, why it sucks to be a tight end, why it sucks to be a running back, the streamy situation, all of that stuff, please stick around, watch them, subscribe, bye. Mwah.